Hi, everyone. Good morning to all of you guys. We are back here at How to Build a Team podcast. And today it's a special day for us. We have a guest, and I am very lucky to say that I've met this guy when we had this Freedom Summit Global. And I was able to speak to the audience, to the market of the digital nomads with this guy, and he's the one of the most authentic person that I ever met. I remember I was getting nervous it's my first time to speak internationally, and I was kind of nervous because it's my turn. But he gave me a bunch of good advice, and he's like that natural and authentic, giving advice and giving you comfort and telling you that you're gonna do good. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Dreams Are Real, From Corporate Job to Become Your Own Boss with Dan McPherson. Dan McPherson, international speaker, business and personal development coach, and CEO of Leaders Must Lead, is on a mission to help creatives and entrepreneurs create and grow profit and understand that dreams are real. With more than 25 years of experience in corporate roles, leading teams of up to 2,000 and responsible for more than 150 million in revenue, Dan is a recognized expert in leadership, sales, and business strategy. Through his Dreams Are Real podcast, Leaders Must Lead Mastermind, Foundations of Success training, and powerful one-on-one coaching, Dan helps hundreds of entrepreneurs around the world, from musicians and artists to chiropractors, coaches, retailers, and beyond, experience success and accomplish their goals. Let's add that to, helping someone who is a first-time speaker. All right, so let's welcome on the show, Dan McPherson. Welcome to our show, Dan. How are you today?
Thank you. I am fantastic, and I appreciate you being here. I will say that as a speaker, you did a great job, and it was a pleasure to connect with you. It's been great to connect with both of you overall, but to see you step up there on stage and shine like a bright light was just a great foreshadowing of this podcast.
Thank you so much, Dan.
That's awesome. I haven't had the chance to meet Dan face to face. We haven't met in person yet, but we have chatted many times over different social media and video stuff. And a lot of what Pam has told me about Dan really rings true in having gotten to know him a little bit virtually. And definitely look forward to the day of being able to meet face to face with you as well, Dan.
I appreciate that. I look forward to it too. Sooner than later, I hope.
Yes.
Maybe later this year. We're working on dates for that.
Yes.
So Dan, I know I read a very amazing bio, but we want to hear it from you. Tell us something about yourself. Why do you do what you do? And just share.
So why do I do what I do is something that I guess I've been trying to put together for a little while. And what I've come to understand is that I've been built for this throughout a lot of my life. I started with being hidden from my father for 6 years, and with a mother who protected me in so many ways. We had difficulties starving and bullies and all of these different things. And my mother always told me that I could accomplish dreams, that she had dreams for me, and she made so many sacrifices that I could. And in return, after having worked in the corporate world for a long time and just had a driving passion to make an impact upon the world, I leapt off the cliff and jumped out to start my own company and be able to do what I believed was right to help people in the world. And that led me to my North Star.
You know what? When I heard Dan speak during the Freedom Summit, I was able to relate to Dan right away, like instantly. I don't know if you remember that when you finished your talk, I followed you.
Yes.
So, having that dream of wanting to help people, I think it's something that attracts me to you because I was able to relate to your story being a single mom, and you told your story about your mom and the struggle and all of that, and just I see genuinely that you really want to help people, and that is really amazing. So Dan, tell me, how did you transition from having a corporate job? And I could tell by your story that it is a lucrative job, something that probably people would dream about having, a stable job and all of that. But why did you choose to leave that corporate job and start your own business and help people?
Well, first, you are correct. It was a very lucrative job. It was being paid more than I had ever thought that I would be from a financial perspective. And there are those who probably think that I was insane to jump off the cliff that I did. I've always felt this burden to help others, and I've always wanted to do it in a significant and impactful way. My North Star has become to significantly and positively impact the lives of 1 million creatives and entrepreneurs in the next 10 years to create generational change. I didn't have it in quite those words, but I knew very much that I wanted to do something that mattered, and that I wanted to do it in the way that I believed was right. As I worked in the corporate world, I would sometimes have great opportunity, but sometimes be very constrained to do what they wanted me to do or what they felt was right, even if I did not. And as I went along, I became much more unsettled. As I became unsettled, I recognized that I either had to do something about it, or I had to decide I wasn't going to do something about it and accept that. I don't have a lot of accepting that in me. So it became about making a plan and figuring out how to do that. And when my supervisors flew in, my senior vice president flew in and offered me my third promotion in 5 years, I looked at them and sat back and said, what would it look like if I declined? And then I resigned and stepped off the cliff to go to zero from having had the nicest job I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's, almost all entrepreneurs or the vast majority of the ones that we've worked with have come from some sort of a corporate or employment type of situation before they took that leap into, being a solopreneur and entrepreneur. But I think yours ranks way up there with the amount of courage, confidence, conviction. I'm not quite sure what the right word is there, but to walk away from, as you said, your third promotion in 5 years, and just instead of moving forward and upward where you were, you cut and made that decision to go out on your own. And that's incredible. I love it.
I moved forward and outward instead of forward and upward. And
yes,
that was better.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think that so many people are terrified of taking a step, even if they know it's one that they need to take. And I've chosen in my life to not live by fear, but rather to live with a mindset of abundance, but also to do what is right, regardless of whether it's convenient. Certainly, my wife and son would tell you that it wasn't convenient in that moment, but I've never really shied away from the difficult decisions in my life. That was difficult in the sense that there was complexity involved, in the sense that I was stepping away from a lot, but it was also clear in what was right for me and my life and my future if I was going to make the impact and be able to have the opportunity to leverage the skills and abilities and experience that I've been blessed to obtain to help others.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You know what, Dan, just to share a little bit, when I was at the corporate, when I had my corporate job as the head of project management to a digital marketing, all of the clients are based in the US, and it was a startup company, and they promised me a lot of things, raise my salary. I'm gonna be promoted to operations manager, and all of that promises. But deep inside, that's why I kind of like know, I know what you're talking about when you feel that it is right because you want to help people. So when I decided to resign from that job, despite of all the promises that they're going to give me, at the back of my head, this is not right. I don't have enough time for my kids, for my family anymore. I've been commuting back and forth. And at the same time, I've been, getting questions from friends of friends who are also a single mom and asking how were you able to survive? So that was at the back of my head. And one day we were I and David were chatting, and I'm like, I want to help these single moms have a job so that they won't, leave their house and leave their kids and still, work from home and, have a career and, earn a living. So I guess, your desire to help people is what drives you to start your own business. So let's talk about you when you started your own business. What was the most challenging part there?
Probably the self-doubt that hit me immediately after I started.
It's like, did I do the right decision? Yeah.
Right. I knew in my heart that I'd done the right thing. But
Yep.
then there's this doubt of whether it will succeed or whether I've been helping people in different ways for years. I really had a couple of clients that I had started with, but can it be big enough? Can it fulfill the dreams and the hopes that you have? Is all this training that I feel like is right in this experience I feel like that's right? Is it, when I go put it to the test, not in the corporate world, but in across all of these different industries, will it work? Who do I serve? How do I make sure that I get the right thing done? And also for me, for quite some time, I've been working with a team.
Yeah.
And in working with a team, I've been leading teams of thousands. And I certainly earlier in my career, I was on my own. I was frontline. I'd done a lot of that. But for quite some time, I've been leading teams of thousands with regional directors or even VPs at different points reporting to me. And now I was alone.
Yeah.
And I felt there were moments, especially in those first months, where I felt very alone. And it's complicated by the fact that I am a refiner at heart and not a creator, which is a lot of why I work with so many creatives. But having to build or create a company from zero was about 4 times more difficult than I thought it might be. Now I teach people how to do it, but doing it myself for the first time was so hard. So being alone, not having a team for the first time, having to create it from zero, combining that with all that self-doubt, that was a crazy soup for a few months there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I can imagine. It's when you're used to having, you said you had people, you had teams, you had people that took care of all of this stuff. To go from that to being essentially a one-man show and having out of necessity to do everything yourself as you built everything up. But bring us a little bit forward. Where did you go from being you doing everything to the point where you realized that you needed some help? You had to bring other people or other skills into the mix in order to move forward?
Well, I recognized pretty quickly that there were skills that I didn't have and that I really didn't want, or maybe I wish I had if I could snap my fingers, but I didn't want to take the effort and time and all of that to learn that the cost of that would be difficult because it took me away from the things that I was good at. And there's a story that I tell often when I speak about the idea of trading time for money or money for time. And I think this is a very important concept for entrepreneurs and one that's very difficult for early entrepreneurs or even people in their personal lives to sit back and grab. I was speaking with a coach of mine and he said, you should hire a virtual assistant. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't have the money for that. And then he started asking me questions. He said, really? He said, so what task would be the first thing you would have a virtual assistant do? And I named something related to social media. And he said, oh, really? How long would that take you? And I already knew I was in trouble because I was on a question path.
Yeah.
I knew that this was where this was likely to end, but I followed dutifully along the path. So he said, how long would it take you to do that task? And I said, oh, about 3 hours. He said, that's interesting. And I'm like, uh-oh. And then he said, how long would it take them to do it? And I said, about an hour. He said, oh, and what would that hour cost? And in this particular case, that task would have been about $10.
Yeah.
He said, so what could you do in that 3 hours that would generate more than $10? And then I knew I was in trouble. And it was at that moment that it clicked that it wasn't just that I needed help. It was that I was losing money every day that I didn't actually go have the help.
Right.
And that
True.
I think that was a different stage for me than adding employees, which came later and much more recently. But adding virtual assistants and doing it in that way, and I've had an amazing virtual assistant that I've used for 3 years there, and now I use that she's in the UK and her team is, but I've also used a number in the Philippines who are amazing and who I support and who support me, and I love this understanding of trading money for time, and as long as you use the time well to generate more than that amount of money, it gives you a real freedom.
That's
No,
that's
very true.
very, yeah, that is true. And I think it's very important for an entrepreneur to have that realization that you need help and that you don't have, you are good at this certain area of your business, but you are not good at some areas of your business as well. So that realization and taking action that you need help had helped you so much to grow your business, right? So, what do you think is what have you had from your corporate job that you were able to help these companies, helped you as well, and apply those things in your own business now that you already have a team?
So there are quite a few there, but I want to make one point on something that you just said, and it was a point that was made to me, which
Mm-hmm.
is that often we look to hire people only for the things that we are not good at. And I think there's a mistake in that assumption. There are things that we are good at that are not the right things to spend our time on. And one of the principles that I teach when I train leadership and when I train time effectiveness is that a big part of delegation is delegating to the lowest level something can be done at, but it's also understanding what the value of your time is. So if
True.
I'm doing a task that can be done for $10 per hour, but I could generate $50 in that hour, then I need to look at how do I have someone else doing that task, even if it is something that I'm good at. So I wanted to make that note there because I don't hear it talked about a lot, and it was hard for me to give up things that I was good at, but it was important, or I never would have went truly forward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
So I
have.
can come back to your question. I just wanted to get that point.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so how did your how did that, having that corporate job for so many years and help these companies grow helped you as well in building your own business, in building your own team?
It helped me in many, many ways. For the last 10 years that I was in the corporate world, I did something that I haven't spoken with many people who have done this, but I knew with about 10 years left that I wanted to help people. I wanted to do it in a way that was probably outside the corporate world. I didn't really know what that looked like or what it would mean, but I knew I would need a series of skills. So I started learning every department that I could. I learned accounting, I learned human resources, I learned all of these different pieces so that I could have knowledge that was wide and deep and be able to address and handle a lot of different issues. One of those things that I became very good at was hiring and developing teams. It's one of my biggest passions. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would train other teams that worked for me. Here's how to hire. Here's how to develop people. Here's how to make sure that you create a culture where people stay.
Yeah.
Bringing that into my own company and training it to my clients has been good, and using those principles has been good. I even used them in hiring the VA originally. My process in hiring a VA used my exact same hiring process.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's awesome.
So when
So,
you, sorry, Pam, Dan, when you realized that you needed help, and I really appreciate the distinction that you made between not just getting help for things that you're not good at, but also getting help for things that aren't cost effective or time effective for you to do yourself. Uh, what was the first? You'd mentioned social media was an easy task to give up that your coach had challenged you to. But beyond sort of I don't want to say basic task, but beyond those things, because social media is a real easy one for most entrepreneurs to give up. It was the first one I was finally able to give up in my other business as well. But what were the big growth things for you in having a virtual team, and where did that take you from and to?
I think that giving up control of payment processing was a pretty big thing. I had to have a high level of trust to be able to do that. And that was a barrier with both trust, but also insecurity of if I had a bad month and this person was going to see that the sales weren't exactly what I hoped, that there was this internal barrier I had to get over to be able to give some of those pieces up, to be able to process payments. I think that was the hardest. There were others as well that were ego driven to me, of creating certain types of content, or allowing them not to getting to a spot where they didn't have to pass things by me to go out. I'm a big fan of empowering people and giving them the opportunity to work, and then providing feedback if they have that, if they have the commander's intent and they go and execute it, and then I just give feedback later. That's important. But getting to that spot where I could just trust them to go, all right, you go and post it. Nope, I don't need to see it. Don't show it to me first. Those were a couple things that were particularly challenging.
Right. Yeah, I can feel your pain on that one. As the creators of our business, we think we know best and that we're the best at doing everything. And it's been a real change for me to be able to give up complete control, as you said. One of my favorite quotes is, hire who you trust and then trust who you hire. And it's, we can't build these things by ourselves, but if we can't get over the trust factor, then we're still building everything by ourselves. It makes no sense having an employee doing a job if you're going to redo the job before it goes out.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very fulfilling and rewarding, and as well challenging all at the same time when you start your own business. But I think, the most important thing there is that you are able to make an impact, change somebody else's life, and, help someone in whatever way that you can. And I really think that having this experience from having a corporate job and then transitioning to being an entrepreneur or self-employed is also, beneficial for each entrepreneurs, right? And then, the things that you realize that you need help, that your time is more valuable than trading money for time and that. So Dan, we have a limited time, and before we wrap up, I want you to, this is very interesting. I mean, I want to dig more about your transition from corporate job to being your own boss. But because of the time, what can you give advice to our listeners if, for those people who would like to transition from corporate job to being their own boss and then eventually building their own team?
I would say that it's important that you follow your North Star, not someone else's. That if you're going to leave the corporate world and go a direction, that you understand why you are doing it, that you have that true star, so that your motivation will push you forward and carry you through what will undoubtedly be difficult times. Generally, when people make these decisions, they're very excited or they're very heightened of emotion. And that's great, until 3 months later when you're in the middle of trying to design a logo and break down in tears. So it's good to really have a solid picture of why you're doing something. I would also say that it's important to understand that things are going to go wrong, and that's okay. That you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to go wrong. People that work for you are going to make mistakes. Things are going to go in some ways very different than you thought they might. And that's okay. As long as you understand the star you're pointing at, you have that direction to be able to move. And that is, I find that to be very helpful. Another is make sure that you have the right coach and support. And I can't underscore this enough, is that most people wait to have a coach until they're well into their business. And when they say they can, quote unquote, afford it. And then I encounter them when there are three modes of business, right? There is build, recover, and accelerate. I encounter most people in the recover phase, and it's so costly because they have to go back and redo a lot of things. But if you get somebody in that build phase that can help you just be a guide and a support and an objective voice, and you'll make clearer decisions, because we all love our own ideas. And the truth is we fall in love with our vision and our ideas. And without that objective voice calling us out, we may not test them in the right way. So I think those, and the last that I would say is this: it's okay to jump off the cliff. It is okay. You want to have a plan to a degree, but it's okay to build the airplane on the way down.
Yeah.
I established a plan and clarity and made sure that I understood what I was doing and how I was going to, at least the basics of how I was going to be serving people and creating. But at some point, when you have uncertainty, you still have to be willing to jump. And that courage to get over it is important. And reminding yourself that what's the worst that can happen? The worst isn't usually very bad. The worst is usually very recoverable. And the best is incredible.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just in your head. I remember, when you mentioned it's okay to jump off the cliff, I think that's what I did when I resigned from that job. I
For sure.
have, yeah, I don't have any backup plan, or well, my backup plan is to work from home again, but I don't have like a job waiting for me once I resign from that job and having two kids to raise them my own. I mean, that is like literally jumping off the cliff. But then again, I if you believe that you have the skills and that you can, start your own thing, it's, everything will, you just have to do what you have to do and
You,
believe in yourself.
you do. I do think it's worth saying, and this I think I've learned mostly in the last year and a half of working with a few different clients, that it's
Hmm.
important to understand your own risk tolerance. I
True.
have a pretty high risk tolerance. I have a pretty high willingness to jump off a bigger cliff than some might. And you're
Hmm.
not better or worse than somebody else because you're not willing to jump off a bigger or shorter cliff. I think we all have to take risks. We all have to take some opportunity and do something where there's this element of uncertainty. But the
Right.
level of comfort that someone gets to it may vary pretty greatly between each of us. So each needs to jump off their own cliff.
Do you want to add something to that, David?
No, I think I agree with that completely. It's everybody has different levels of tolerance of risk. And Dan, you and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, sort of around that and decision making, and how Pam and I as business partners, and how we really complement each other's strong and weak points. And my weak point is getting to the point of pulling the trigger. I analyze, and then I analyze my analysis, and then I double check everything again. And I finally come around to, okay, I've made a decision. Yes, we should do this. And Pam's like, yeah, I started it 2 weeks ago. And we always end up at the same place. We just get there at different speeds and slightly different approaches. But
Yeah.
it's been a great thing for our business that I'm a very slow, methodical decision maker, and Pam is helping to pull me through that. And your advice to me a couple of weeks ago has helped immensely as well.
It's
Well,
cool.
fantastic.
So on that note, Dan, how do our listeners get in touch with you? Where do we find you? What's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you directly?
So directly, lots of ways they can do it, but probably the fastest will be through leadersmustlead.com, our website. And then also the Facebook page, Leaders Must Lead, and our group that supports our podcast, Dreams Are Real. That is a lot of the theme that I love to share in the world, that no matter what we do, dreams are real. So come join our group, support that podcast, just as we support what you guys are doing here. And that's the easiest place to find me.
All
Awesome.
right.
We'll include that in the show notes as well. So if people can click on that link directly. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on with us today. This has been great. And like Pam said, we'll have to continue and dig into this conversation more in the future.
Yeah.
I
But
look forward to a round two. Thank you guys. I'm honored to be here.
before we end the show, I don't want to forget Harold. You brought Harold. Can you tell us about Harold?
Well, I can show Harold, right? So just my quick bit on Harold, advice that I received. I am a big advocate of leaders being willing to speak about challenges that they have with anxiety and overwhelm and depression and those things. And I've struggled with those. I'm not ashamed of it. I refuse to be ashamed of it. In fact, I am empowered by it. And one of the things that we all have is this voice that shouts negative things in our head. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. Other people have done this. And it sounds so rational or cute and adorable, like our little stuffed animal here. But if we name that voice, and in my case, it's Harold. And we can look at it, and when it sounds rational, we can realize that it's actually pretty scary and it's full of lies. And we can say, shut up, Harold. I think that is a great piece of advice to every entrepreneur that's out there, is to make sure that you can listen to your coaches and your counselors and your peers and those things, but the little voices in your head that shout you down are full of lies. So tell them to shut up, just the same way we say shut up, Harold.
Very well said, Dan. You also have this one-on-one coaching. They can find information about this in theleadersmustlead.com.
Yes, they will find information about our mastermind, about our one-on-one coaching, and I'm glad to help and connect. And they're certainly welcome to reach out via my email at dmcpherson@leadersmustlead.com, which you'll find in all those places as well. I love to connect with people and love to help in any way that we can.
We're going to put that in our show notes. Thank you, Dan. Again, this has been David and Pam of How to Build a Team podcast. If you find this valuable, please write us a comment, write us a review, and we will really appreciate that. You can find us at www.greatworkonline.com. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Great Work Online, just one word, and hope to catch you there. Again, we will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.